Yeah. Can you believe we're at episode 10 already, Mike?
That's a huge milestone. I don't know what the data is behind this, but I think we've surpassed like 75% of the podcasters that start something and they don't keep going. So episode 10 is a huge. I think episode 12 was like another big one. So who would have thought that we could stick to this for this long?
Who would have thought that you would have stuck with me for that's, I'm not great with math, but 30-minute episodes, 10 of them, that's probably pushing 300 minutes. Am I right?
Oh, Lord.
That you have spent
that
with
much
me
time
plus? Yeah. This is, I'm getting a little misty-eyed here,
No, the one thing you didn't give me a crap about, so I violated all my rules on my shirt should be a single color, somewhat match my beautiful mid-century modern painting behind me. And now I'm wearing my flannel. Well, here's why, because we're going to roll up our sleeves, Brian, and we're going to go back and look at our first 9 episodes. So we got some work to do.
The only reason I thought you end up rolling up your sleeves is because the wife shrunk a long sleeve shirt anyways in the dryer under high. That's what I thought was the only reason you do that, or you outgrow it.
Yeah. I didn't want to call her out though. I mean, that's not
okay.
That's not nice. That's
good.
Nice.
That's why your relationship has been so solid for so many years. Yes.
100%. Well,
so let's dive into some of this. This is good stuff. So we're going to do a summary is what we're going to do. We're going to do a little bit of a summary of some of the key points, the aspects of the last 9 episodes and see what we can get out of it. So go ahead.
So those that are just starting to watch, you're going to start to see, and I told Brian that, I had to pull my whiteboard out, right? So
beautiful.
We've got the thumbnails for each of the episodes, and Brian, thank you so much. You have really gone to town on editing, our episodes, on pulling clips out for social media. I really appreciate the work that you're doing behind the scenes, because it's easy. All I have to do is show up and talk.
That's right.
And, it doesn't take much. A little bit of coffee.
Yeah, and it really does pay to not have a social life. It does pay off, and it has some incredible dividends,
So what's nice about it is, you and I talked that we want to get together, do this every week. You and I are serving somewhat different markets, but our approaches are very similar, right? And we know the key things we need to look at within businesses. And so when I look back and look at those first 9 episodes, there's some key themes that played out, through, since episode 1 that we want to talk about. And then in the end, we'll talk a little bit more about how we're going to do deeper dives into each of these, because we are going to come back and revisit each of these pieces of our operating system we laid out, some of the tools we've talked about. And then we want to go deeper dives. So for the listeners, if you had a chance to go through and actually take action on the things we identified, you now have a foundation, right, of formalizing your operating system. And then we want to take those, step by step, further and further along, so that our listeners can actually do what we do, right? We get paid, to come in and help companies. But for those that want to do it themselves, we're going to give you all the tools to do it. 100%.
Enjoy it. Don't say, oh gosh, I didn't do this part. Do not get bogged down with that. Enjoy the fact that you're like, I did this part. Wow, this part actually worked. So, hey, fair warning, we got a lot to get through. I am going to interrupt you. You interrupt me, and we'll try to keep this going, because it's going to be almost impossible for us to get through 9 episodes of just incredibly intense, deep data. So you go ahead.
Well, I think number one is we've called it the North Star. Some companies call it their primary aim, the vision, whatever that thing is that's what's driving the business. And when we talk about alignment, talk about engagement, these things will come up. If you don't have that North Star, then it's hard to get the team engaged and activated around what you want to do as a business. So I think almost every episode that we talked about, we either talked about strategy, which of course encompasses the North Star, or specifically about that North Star.
Yeah.
So I think that number one, if you don't have that, let's get that down on paper. It can change over time, but that's the sort of that key
The guiding
anchor,
light.
the
Yeah.
guiding light, the key anchor for the business, and we want to keep revisiting that.
Right. Right.
You had
And I
mentioned
do
about.
want to say,
Go ahead.
I do want to say some people they really get intimidated, especially with their own business. Oh, what is my North Star? What are my core values? What is my mission statement? This and that. Coming from somebody who had to do it on his own, and I had to do that, start with me. Start with just that one vowel, I. Okay. What is my core value? What are my core values? What do I stand for? What do I want this company to represent in me? Then you go from there, and it makes it so much more simple and fun. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be something that is a full day of, all right, batten down the hatches. We're going to come up with an amazing core values and mission statement that everybody will be floored with. No, start with yourself. That's it.
I love that, Brian. If you look at most of the mission statements, vision, and again, we're not saying you have to have a vision statement and a mission statement and values. You could have one simple paragraph. Let's call it the North Star. And if you talk about yourself, what you want, so ownership of the business, the team, your team, and your customers. If you espouse your thinking on those three areas, I talked about that tension triangle. If all you did was write a paragraph and that was the only thing that you had, and that became your North Star, and what it could be is just documenting your North Star, because I'll bet you a lot of people out there, although they've never documented it, they're living it.
Absolutely.
They literally do this.
Absolutely.
They're doing this every day.
Yeah. And when we acknowledge it and verbalize it, it puts it out there so that we know two things: which way to go and which way not to go. Very simply. That's it. And that's the joy and beauty of it. And so this is great. And I love that one paragraph. And if you're intimidated by writing a paragraph, just do bullet points. Don't even do a full sentence, because the point is just get it down. And you made this point, just a wonderful point, with the responsive operating system, which what was that, episode 7, or 6, I don't know. Anyways, the point being, you have it on your handy dandy billboard there. The point being is it gets written down. It has to get written down. I'm sorry, episode 5. Wow. It has to get written down.
So this is great, because our last episode, Brian, we talked about meetings. And one of the things we talked about is, where do you want to go? Well, this North Star is where you want to go.
Yeah.
So if you take a step back, say, okay, if that's where we want to go, what is in our way from where we're at today, and what do we have to overcome to get there? That's your strategy. So we talked about strategy a lot, and everybody gets so confused about strategy. And one of the simplest things I found, Brian, is if you think about, if you have a North Star, our little paragraph, you have a strategy that talks about, how do I get from where I'm at today to that North Star? So that's a hypothesis around, how do I overcome those obstacles? I put a business plan in to execute that strategy. And then I have project plans, those 3 levels. So what most companies have is potentially, maybe some have all 3 of those things: a strategic plan, a business plan, and project plans. But some may just have something that's driving the business. So you get that paragraph out, and the first thing you look at is saying, what am I doing today already that's getting me closer to that North Star and aligns with the North Star? So you can literally start to document your strategy. Even though you don't think you have it, you do, right?
Yeah. And what we really want to do is, we want to get rid of this corporate jargon, because it's intimidating and it's not necessary. And what you're saying is, hey, know where we are, know where we want to go, know what's in the way, and then have a plan to execute that, to get around what's in the way, like we covered in our meetings podcast the other day, and then reevaluate. This is all that's a strategic plan, an operations plan. I mean, the whole 9 yards. And it's like, well, wait, we didn't have to use that jargon that's so intimidating.
Yeah.
Now, when you're at a cocktail party and you want to impress people, that's when you start breaking it out.
We got the North Star. We've got our one paragraph. Now we're starting to write up what are the things that we're doing to go from where we're at today to that North Star. That's our strategy. And then the business plan literally is just documenting what are all the things that you're working on to get you there. This will include your financials, right? Your projections, those kinds of things. Most companies already have that. In fact, a lot of companies use their financials as their business plan. No problem. What we're going to do is wrap these things around the North Star and the strategy around what you're doing today so that you can actually connect the dots and know exactly why you're doing what you're doing. The cool thing is, a lot of times the owner has that in their head. Well, why don't you get it out on paper so that everybody can see what that is?
Right.
And then you're more intentional about doing that. So we've been talking about that, getting all this visible. It usually exists. It's just not documented and visible. So let's formalize it.
Yeah, and being a finance guy and a numbers guy, let me just caution all of you who are going to do a business plan around just the numbers. Don't do it. I got two people that I'm going to tell you, and maybe I mentioned it before: Benjamin Graham, Warren Buffett. Benjamin Graham was the man who inspired and Warren Buffett learned from on everything. Did he make any money in the stock market? Almost no money. He was all about numbers. He was all about future cash flow discounted to present value. Same things as what Warren Buffett did. However, Warren Buffett added one key thing, and this is a differentiator on everything, and it is mind-blowing. And that was sustainability. Is the product and product line sustainable, and does it have a competitive advantage over the rest of the industry? If it does, and then it lines up with Benjamin Graham's numbers, it's the company to invest in. And now look at them. I mean, it's insane the difference between that. So my point being, just like what you were saying, don't just do the numbers, but actually have a plan that's executable, that's sustainable, and moves on. And that goes into what we've talked about with the SOS and the ROS. You can have a strategy, but if you can't optimize it and then sustain it, what good is it? So
I love those two questions, Brian, because when you talk about having a discussion on strategy, if you ask those two things about your own business, you got your North Star, you're putting together your strategy. If you see that a few years out down the road that it is not sustainable, right? That you don't have a competitive advantage, guess what your strategy has to do? It has to say, oh, we need to start to make some pivots here, because we know that 2 to 3 years from now, we need to figure out, if we were a competitor, how would we take out the company that we're running?
Yep.
And you start to think about that way. So if you ask just those two simple questions, the answers to those questions become your strategy. So let's move on to execution and problem solving and meetings. And so we've really had fun here. We've talked about, let's have a plan, let's document what we're going to do, but it's going to be more around a hypothesis. So we're going to either just do it. We talked about this last week. We're going to just do it with a hypothesis so we can go back and revisit those decisions we've made. We're going to run an experiment to learn something, or we're going to run an experiment to move forward. So when we look at our plan is well thought out. Our plan is executed well. But to say that our plan will not change, right? That we're not there anymore, right? We're a learning organization. We're using experiments at every level of the business. And when we get into execution, that we talked about last week, structured well with a high trust team, we can, in meetings, use those meetings to figure out how are we going to move forward, what type of action are we going to take. And then when we come back after a week or two and we review what happened, there aren't going to be any surprises. There's going to be, hey, we did this, worked well. We did this, we learned this, we did this. It didn't work. Well, that's an experiment. Here's what we learned from that. And here's the pivot we're going to make, and we're going to move forward. So We're not changing our strategy based on how we're executing, but our plan of execution will morph based on the actions that we're taking. This becomes so much fun. We've talked about engagement, Brian. I mean, what type of engagement you get when you have team members that are running experiments now? They're not ticking off things on an action plan that aren't any fun, that they didn't have any part to do with. So how does that change the environment for the coworker?
Absolutely. A huge amount. And this leads into what we talked about last week, was the fact that, hey, there is no room for those two things that are horrible in organizations: ego and fear. You can't get anything done if everybody's an egomaniac. And then you can't push the company forward if you're afraid of failing or what may happen. So this process that we've talked about, and it's very simple and straightforward, of just doing the meetings, eliminates that. Because when we're constantly establishing and reviewing experiments, and think of it in that limelight rather than a make it or break it, this is just it's a game changer, and it changes and it increases engagement, and it's a lot of fun. So absolutely.
The next piece we talked about, this was back with the responsive operating system, is starting to document your processes. Some may just be basic process mapping, it could be value stream mapping, but the idea is, once you have the North Star, we have our strategy, we're starting to execute, we're doing problem solving, run experiments. Now we can take a look and let's formally define what our processes are, what our value streams look like. Then we can start to talk about proactively improving those. So not waiting for a problem to happen, right? We're going to proactively improve those. One, document, and then two, improve those as we go. So now your team, again, it's the people that actually do the work, right? They're the ones that are going to help us figure out what are the improvements that we can make that will create more value for the customer faster than we do today, and improve your quality dramatically. So some companies or some consultants would say, you come in, the first thing you do is map. What we're talking about is, no, let's get the rest of this stuff documented, right? And we're talking about weeks here, right? What we just talked about, if you followed through and did one episode a week and started putting these things in place, you're now 2-3 months in. Now we can say, hey, now let's start to document those processes. The big thing now everybody's talking about is, well, I should say about a year ago was all about systemization, right? Systemize your business, systemize your business. And now, of course, with AI, it makes it even easier. But here's the problem. If your system's not documented, if your processes aren't documented, and embedded in those are failure points that you don't know, if you automate that, good luck. You will make mistakes faster than you ever made before, right? That automation using AI or just basic automation tools that have been around forever can really cause problems. So what we're saying is, start getting the team working together, focusing on that North Star, executing against a strategy, having very productive meetings, identifying what actions we're going to take, coming back and talking about what happened. And now we're saying, let's get proactive. Let's start to document processes and value streams and start to talk about project improvements that we're going to take that improve that entire stream of work instead of one little piece of it. Then if you want to put automation on top, fantastic. Because now we've leaned out, and I got to use that word, we've leaned out that process, that value stream, and it will execute much better today. And then again, if you want to throw some automation on top of it, use AI or just, again, basic automation tools, you can do that. But now you have a solid foundation. And so if something happens, you can look back and go, it's not a black box. Because if you layer this on top of a system that's not documented, you've created a black box. And when there are issues with how it's executed, you do not know why. Because you didn't document the underlying systems, the underlying processes that are happening. And business rules, right, that are built into your systems. Those all become exposed, become visible, and you can be intentional about saying, yep, this stays, this goes. We improve, and then as you improve them, again,
I love
update
it.
the documentation, update the AI. And so
Yeah.
in like
I love it. And I just want to interrupt you there. And because when you're saying these things, it just resonated so much when I had my business of like, yes, it's so true. Four words came to mind, and I think it's a key point and that can just summarize what you're saying. Systems eliminate emotional whiplash. And
Ooh,
that's what happens because our businesses are made of us. We are emotional creatures. When we have a system, it keeps us in check from getting that emotional whiplash. I know I've been through it because it's like, oh, sales are up. Oh, all right, great. Now I got to watch expenses. Oh, sales are down. Oh no, now I got to go and I got to make sure I'm driving traffic in the store. Okay, now processes are gone. Da 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 da. And it's that emotional whiplash. And what you're saying is have this system documented, and it's going to eliminate that. And that's what I love about it. But we have to be careful about that. Don't feel bad. I mean, our business is a reflection of us. If we're emotional, the business is going to act emotional too, if it isn't constrained with some systems. So go ahead.
yep. And then the other piece that's embedded in here, in we talked about engagement when we did a deep dive on engagement. We talked about leaders and leader standard work. So embedded in here also is we're changing how our leaders work with our frontline coworkers. We're changing how the what kind of behaviors we expect from them, setting expectations, and those are being pointed at opportunities with, again, if you use the Gallup 12, whatever type of engagement tool you use, engagement assessment, um, go after those low scores, keep sustaining those high score areas, go after those low scores, identify behaviors, things that we want to do differently. And that's all happening while we're implementing this responsive operating system.
Absolutely.
This is how you change culture. So if you said, hey, I don't like our culture, your culture is built around the systems that you have in place today. It's actually almost a defense mechanism. So when somebody new comes in and they try to start changing things, it's this body tries to kind of push against that person, right? Because it's like, no. Well, we're coming in from a leadership perspective, working with the team, is saying this is how we're going to move forward. This is how we want to run the business going forward. And as these new things get put in place, the new leadership behaviors get put in place, the focus on engagement, focus on our customers, guess what happens? Your culture will change. It has to change to adapt to that. This is an intentional culture that you have versus the culture that you've landed on. Now, some companies are been very lucky that they've got an incredible culture, great people to work with. Um, a lot of times you'll look and see there are some companies that, they're having a tough time, high turnover, um, potentially disengaged coworkers. The first thing a leadership sometimes will say is, this team, we got the wrong team. Uh, you start working on your responsive operating system, the things we've been talking about. I'm going to say, I bet you 70-80% of the people on your team will be great team members, right? They are going to stick around. They're going to be engaged. They're going to love it. And yet, yeah, unfortunately, some people are going to look at this and go, I'm not, I don't want to do this. And they'll leave on their own. And others, we may have to say, this may not be the best place for you to work. But
Right. Right.
the focus is always on, hey, the team did this. It's like, no, you, Mr. Owner, Mrs. Owner, leadership, you created what you've got today. You created this entire system and the way people behave. And what we're saying is, if you're intentional about this, starting from the top and go through this process, you're starting to set expectations all the way through the business. What we expect everyone to do, all the way down to the people that are having the interface with the customer, making the product for them, and they're part of the solution. Game on, right? You've got a
Right.
highly engaged
Right.
team. They're part of the solution. They're the ones doing problem solving, and this becomes an entirely different business. And again, this is not an 18-month turnaround at
Yeah.
all.
I look at it this way. And you said it, but you have a dirty glass of water. There's two ways you can make that clean and put is you either dump it out, right? You dump it out and start over, which is, oh, get rid of the team. Or you just keep filling it with clean, pure water. And what's going to happen? That's going to churn it up. It's going to churn, and guess what's going to spill out? Yeah, the dirty water will. It's insane what happens when you do that. And you may have to use more water, right? You may have to use more water. Yeah, well, it's more efficient if I just dump it out. Yeah, but is it more productive? Is it better for your team? So you can just by pouring in a good operating system, a responsive operating system, pushing the engagement, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, that water isn't as dirty as it used to be. What's going on? Well, it's our culture. It's a byproduct. It's a byproduct. So I
Right.
love it. All right, what else we got?
Well, and what you say is, when you notice along the way, have we talked about growing revenue? We've talked about, contribution margin. Have we talked any of those things? We have not. Those are critical, right? You're going to have your financials in place, but if you focus on the system itself, if you focus on the things we've been talking about, you will get higher retention rates internally. You're going to have a higher loyalty with your customers. You'll have higher sales per customer. You'll be able to attract new customers, and you'll drive more to the bottom line.
Right.
But nowhere in this responsive operating system did we say, well, we're expecting to have 5% increase in revenue. We're expecting contribution margin to go up by 1%. We want X amount of turnover. Those are all great things. What I'm saying is, if you don't focus on those solely and you focus on the system, documenting the system from the beginning, from the very top of the North Star, and go all the way through, you will get paid back in spades on that investment in time with your team, without hammering on them all the time about, we need more sales, we need more customers come through the door, we need to turn our inventory faster. Those things will come. They will absolutely come. And you talk about sustainability, Brian. You always have an operating system, but a responsive operating system, one that stays, runs the business today as well as it can, anticipates things that are coming, supports the strategy as we start to talk about how we're going to pivot going down the future. You have that. You have a sustainable business. You know what? Maybe Berkshire Hathaway is going to invest in your company.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the key is, when you have this responsive operating system, you're growing your engagement, you're growing your culture, the whole 9 yards. But the other thing is, you are not worried about this number that's happened, this bad number that's happened. And too often we get caught up into the revenue number, the gross profit margin number, this number, inventory turnover, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. We get caught up into that number, which is, like you said, merely a byproduct. Instead, we need to have the Navy SEAL approach, which is good. No matter what happens, good. Good, because now we know what's going on, and we're gonna hit it head on, and we'll win. That's just what's gonna happen. The worst thing can happen is if we don't know what's going on. That's not good. So if it's bad and you tell me, good. If it's good and you tell me, good.
So the other thing to wrap around this, and we're going to talk about this a lot in the future, is AI.
Mm-hmm.
Nowhere along the way do we say that you need to use AI, but what we're going to talk about is, for everything that we talked about today, we could talk about the prompts you want to use with AI to get you information. So
Yeah.
you don't have to go out and buy
It is such a
books.
powerful tool. It's such a powerful tool. It is the ultimate equalizer for small businesses now, bar none. Bar none.
Right.
So this is the way to contribute to, or this is the way to beat the big companies that have much more assets than you do. So go ahead.
Yep. And we talked about is being very strategic on where to bring in AI at those strategic leverage points. So what we're saying is, the responsive OS, again, is all this can be done on paper to start with. However, we're going to show you different prompts to use to start to think about, how do you define your North Star? How do you look at strategy and those kinds of things? And so we're not going AI first initially. We're using AI to support what we're doing. Same with as we start to look at documenting processes or value streams. We want to document those on a whiteboard, on paper, in a spreadsheet, wherever we want to do that, in PowerPoint. Then after we do that, then we can actually use that with AI and say, hey, AI, help me. right? Help me do this. So we are loving AI.
This is great. This is
We're
great.
loving AI, but we're saying is if you do these things first,
Yeah.
it will pay off in spades. And in fact, if you don't do these things and bring AI in, like you and I talked about, is you can actually do more damage and do it way faster than ever.
Well, we talked about the differentiator between AI. Is it a toy or a tool? If you don't have a system on which you can put AI and implement it, it is merely a toy and it's a hobby. So anything else? What else? This is great stuff. This is great review.
How'd we do after 9 episodes, dude?
My goodness, I think it's great. I can't believe how much you've learned from me.
You know what though? We had, and again, I want to thank you for even asking me to do this. I remember, I think you'd sent me a text message, or maybe we were having one of our,
I want to thank you for
calls.
saying yes. I mean, you were like the 8th or 10th person that I asked. That's not true. You're the first and only person on my list. I went through my friend list and it was like I had 3 and 2 of them were family members. So, and you were the 3rd.
And you do enough with your family already, right? So
yeah, but that's right. They don't want to hear from me.
What was really interesting is that we, is so matched in terms of what is so critical to help small businesses. Our approaches have been a little bit different, but I think we're actually creating something very cool here. That this is live. I mean, this is very organic. It's years of ours working within different industries, but bringing this all together and this merge now with AI. And man, I'm excited. This is so much fun, Brian.
This is a great road, and I'm excited to be on it with you. And this has been a lot of fun. And here's to 100 more episodes.
Absolutely.